Hi everyone, and welcome to the 345 podcast. I'm Henry,
I'm Gordon, and I'm James, and today we'll be talking about the Wee Hoose.
For the record, I did not come up with that title. Way to be a team player, Gordon. I'll support any team I'm on, as long as it's beneficial to do so.
Well, before you jump ship, you might want to hear me out. Might I? How do I know this isn't some kind of joke? So you don't know anything about the Wee Hoose? Tops. How about you, Henry?
Can't say I do. I'm guessing it's up in Scotland.
Aye, and before I go any further, I want to clarify I'm not taking the mickey out of Scottish pronunciation. The topic of this video is legitimately called the Wee Hoose. And what is it exactly? It's this small house located on an island in Loch Shin near the town of Lairg. And when I say small, I mean micro. Really. Let me look at... Bust my buffers! It's tiny! Who lives there? Nobody, but the story about how it came about is very interesting. Back in 1824, there was a bloke who lived in the area named Jock Brown. He was a poacher who knew how to distill whiskey. This skill attracted the attention of an estate owner who approached Mr. Brown with a proposition. In exchange for teaching the owner how to make whiskey, he'd give Jock some land. I'm sure you can see where this is going.
Aye, sounds like Mr. Brown got a raw deal.
I'm sure he would disagree. He didn't have much to his name and was pretty chuffed at becoming a landowner, so he built a wee hoose upon it. Unfortunately, not long after he finished, he accidentally shot himself in the foot and died. At least he left behind something for his family.
His family?
Aye, he had a wife and several children. Wait a moment. How can a family of any size live in a house that looks to be about as big as a dining room table? They can't, and they didn't. What do you mean they didn't? I mean that while the house is very real, the story behind it isn't. It's all made up.
Really?
Aye. You see, in the 1990s, the Wee Hoose was part of a float for the Lairg Gala. After the gala was over, rather than dismantle it, some people decided to take it down to the loch, plonk it on the island, and made up a story to go with it. They were pretty dedicated to it as well. They even got dressed up in old-timey clothes and took photographs to lend the story some authenticity. In fact, the house that's currently on the island isn't even the original. It's the third one. The previous two were destroyed by bad weather. Sounds like an awful lot of effort to go through. Why'd they do it? For a bit of fun, and it'd be a good way to test a person's knowledge. Like you said, Gordon, how can a family of any size live in such a small property? Not to mention the first photograph wasn't taken until 1826. Also, I believe the names of Jock Brown's family actually come from a Scottish comic strip called The Browns, and probably the most glaring detail is the Wee Hoose has a TV aerial on top of it. Yes, that should have been my first clue something was amiss. How jolly interesting. In fact, it reminds me of a story I heard from this chap about something that happened in his teens. He and some friends went to this old shack in the nearby woods. Seeing as it was Halloween, they were dressed up as mummies, vampires, ghosts, etc. While at the shack, they exchanged substances and began flying through the woods, making all manner of noise. Their antics were spotted by several people, but since it was night and their costumes made their silhouettes appear inhuman, the onlookers' imagination ran wild. Now, several decades later, the community tells stories about strange creatures that inhabit the woods.
I take it the teens never told anyone it was them?
No, because they would have gotten in trouble.
You reckon that's how all folklore starts? Either as some people having a laugh or others misinterpreting things?
Possibly. Could that also apply to mythology or religion? I can see why you want to talk about this, James. The Wee Hoose definitely lends itself to a wider conversation, and I look forward to seeing it take place in the comments. I would also like to say one final thing about the Wee Hoose. A couple of years ago, the BBC ran a program about it. I can't remember what it was called, but I gather they thought the story was real.
No kidding. I don't know why, but I always find it satisfying when I hear about big companies being taken in hook, line, and sinker.
Indeed. Well, if nobody has anything further to add, we may as well move on to the questions. During the preparation for this podcast, a suggestion was made over on our Patreon that we answer in-universe questions, which we will.
And today's question is, do non-faceless vehicles require sleep? If so, how much? Can they break down or die if they don't get enough? Yes, we do require sleep. How much depends on how tired we are.
Fatigue also affects our performance, and we can break down from exhaustion. As for dying, yes, that's possible. We are somewhat like humans in that we have our limits. If those limits are pushed beyond reason, the results can be disastrous. I hope that answers your question. If you have any you'd like to ask, sound off down below. Likewise, if you have a topic you'd like us to discuss.
And that's all we have time for today. So until next time, stay awesome.